Edward. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me, Sherry.
Oh, thank you
Happy to
for
be
being here.
here.
Oh, me too. Stop it. Me too. I'm more happy. So I'm so excited to have this conversation. I love your energy. I love your voice. I just love your presence. And what I love also is your story. And I understand you're a newly published author of cancer, musical theater, and other chronic illnesses. And you're now celebrating 10 years cancer free. So congratulations.
Yeah, I'm about to hit 11, which is really just such a wild.
So
It's been a journey. Let's put it that way.
So amazing. So you had a rare case of a particular leukemia, and maybe you could just start by sharing your story. And I know we're going to tap into this, and this is such an important topic for me because I lost my mom through the C word, and I think a lot of us know somebody, or we know many people, or we may even be going through it ourselves. And so there's just so many ups and downs, and a lot of what you were sharing with me just super resonated. And just witnessing my mom go through this, it's super connected with me. And I think it's so important that we share this message, and we just give people the reality of what really that situation is like. So thanks again for being here, and I'd love to hear your story.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so in 2011, I was diagnosed with rare and large B-cell Burkitt's like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which was like unheard of for anyone in my remote geographic or demographic location things. And there was a lot of head scratching going on with my first hospital, which will remain nameless. And they were such a dumpster fire. They just kind of kept pumping me full of drugs and hoping for the best, which is like, I mean, I understand like practice of medicine, it's not perfected, and especially in rare cases, you kind of are like kind of throwing stuff at the wall and hoping that it sticks. But you never want to hear that as a
Mhm.
patient. You never really want to be told like, hey, things are hopeless, so we're just going to start emptying bags of drugs into your body and see what happens.
Brutal.
And so like that it was a weird time, and it was especially derailing because I was so young and I was so hot and
Oh,
like
you.
didn't know it, but like I was looking back, I'm like, oh God, I wasted that. But then, having everything derail and go into this whole experience of like being in the cancer world of things was really wild. And when you look at the timeline of it, it was really only 10 months of treatment from start to finish. Like I knew I had something going on for about a year ish.
Mm.
Um, ish. That's wrong. It was like 6 months. I'm exaggerating. I'm sorry. It was like
Felt like
June.
forever.
Yeah, forever. It was like I knew since I was a child. There was something wrong with me. But going into this, it was like there was a lump that had been growing for several months, and it was growing quickly and very aggressively, as I say, and to the point where like my skin was stretching, and I had stretch marks all over my side from this thing like trying to grow out of my body. And so when I finally was able to get back to my doctor in the city, I was basically like chucked right into a hospital from there. I had a biopsy, and a week later I was in treatment.
Mm. Wow. Wow. So I'm super honored to be having this conversation with you today. And I'm so happy that you are now 11 years into recovery and that you were able to beat this. And we're going to definitely dive into what that process looked like. But a couple of things that just kind of came up for me was, well, first of all, the ignoring the symptoms for a long time, which I want to dive into. And then the other part too is looking back at a particular time of your life where you're like, man, I wasted that. Man, I looked good. I was hot. And how many of us do this? Like, how many of us do this? Anybody listening right now, where you look back in your 20s and you spent most of it feeling uncomfortable, no confidence, feeling like you were overweight, like you didn't like how you looked in clothes. And now you look back at those photos and you're like, my God, what was I
I
thinking?
would literally kill someone to look like that again.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And, in the moment, you're like, oh, I'm disgusting. And you're like just comparing yourself to all these people that you have no business comparing yourself to for a number of reasons. Um, but I look back at that and I'm just like, oh, and then how much time do we waste trying to like jam ourselves back into that?
Right. Right.
And this is actually something I talk about frequently, not necessarily within the appearance, fitness, weight conversation, but it still applies. Whereas, when you come out of something as traumatic as what I had gone through, whether that be cancer for listener specific, whatever, when you come out on the end of it, you just have to kind of realize that the person that you were is dead. And you just can't. It's a waste of time and energy, brain space. It makes you love yourself less when you're doing it because you're comparing yourself to someone who doesn't exist anymore. And it's just an unfair comparison to do to yourself. And I still do that. I still look at this. There's this one picture of me from when I was 27 and I was right out of treatment. I'm sitting on a yacht in a custom made suit in Florida. Like it's
Mm.
absolutely fabulous. And at the time, I thought I looked like this disgusting beast. And I look back at that and I'm like, goals, life goals. Like, can I just get one more round of chemo just to look like that? Like, one more, just like suck it out of me.
Oh no.
But that's what we do to ourselves. And certainly this journey from like being a very like healthy, active 24-year-old to being a very sickly, decimated 25-year-old to being 26 and 27 and rebuilding from the ground up. Those are three different people.
Right.
And comparing myself at 27, where I was a year out of treatment, is not a fair comparison for myself now, 10 years later, looking at that and being like, oh God, I just want to look like that ever again. It's never going to happen unless I involve science.
Well, never say never. And then I'll invite you maybe to connect with me offline and we could talk about this and I'll show you some of my YouTube workouts and all that. And it's actually some limiting beliefs, but something that you said really just resonated with me. And I believe that our suffering comes from living in the past or focusing on the future. And what we're really trying to do is embrace this one small state of time, right? Especially when you're looking back at photos and you're like, wow, I looked so great. There was that one state of time that you are wanting, that you're desiring to come back, but never really staying in the present moment. And the same thing when we're looking into the future or we're setting goals around something that we want to create in the future. When I release 30 pounds, then I'll be happy. When I find the guy, then I'll be complete. When I make this business and I make this much money, then I'll be. And so we're constantly living in a place that's not in the present moment. And we can never find joy because those moments are not here. There's this magical thing that we're trying to achieve, this magical point in time where there's a particular state of joy that we think that we're going to achieve. And everything we're doing right now today is for that moment. And so we're not living in this place where we can find the joy and the gratitude and all of the things that we currently have. Because Edward, you have it all. I'm actually, you're talking and I'm looking at this handsome dude across from me. I'm like, what is he talking about? The past, like he's trying to bring this
Well,
back.
it's
Me.
but you know what I mean though. It's just like that self-comparison thing. And it's really funny that you said really everything that you just said because I just got off a work call where this was the exact conversation
Hmm.
of like chasing the goal that you're never going to get, or even if you do want to get it and you do get it, realizing like, oh, this is it.
Right.
I point back to this interview that I heard with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck on the Graham Norton show where they're talking about how they won that Oscar for Good Will Hunting when they were 24 and 25 years old, I think.
Crazy.
Like in like same age I was when I had cancer. And like Matt Damon said that he remembers like sitting in his hotel room with this statue and just being like, that's it?
Hmm.
Like that's it? I have this statue. And like he was like, I just immediately thought about like this 80-year-old man who spent his whole life working towards this thing and then gets the thing and has that like, oh my God, I have wasted my whole life for what?
Right.
And it's the same thing that you're talking about with like fitness or money or the guy or whatever have you. And it really is a waste of time and energy. And yet we all still do it for some reason.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's like the tangible thing that we can see.
Right.
And it's like, if I can just get that. And it's not to me, it's not even the if or when, it's the then what.
Mm.
And that's a big through line conversation I have with people often is the what do you want? And it's always like, oh, I want to do this, and like very similar to what you're talking about.
Right.
But I'd love to get past that and be like, let's pretend that you already have all of those things.
Yes.
Then what do you want?
Right.
Because if you have it all, then all the things that you want are gone. And so then you're either like an empty vessel of nothing that has everything that they want, or you get to figure out what the next step is to like that fulfillment, if you want to call it that, of what your life means and is for.
So good. So good. You know, I don't actually believe we want those things. I actually think we want the feelings of those things, right? Like the
The
feeling,
validation, yeah.
right, the feeling to have the guy or the feeling to have the money or the feeling to have the health. And instead though, what we could do is focus on harnessing again that those feelings right now. If I know the feelings that I want in the future, then why can I not start to live in them now? Because ultimately, I don't really want that state. I don't want to be just 30 pounds lighter because I can be 30 pounds lighter and really ill. And you just shared you went through chemo, and you'll see people. I saw my mom with her, and it was so, one of the lines that she said towards the end was, I've lost all this weight, and it's what I always was trying to do. And look at me. Like, look how I did it. And I would just like, that killed me because how many of us in those last moments will wish that we were 10 pounds lighter, or will wish that we had lost those 5 pounds or didn't have the pizza last night, right? We would do anything to be 20 pounds heavier and have our health, right? So health is not a state, it's actually a feeling. And that feeling has to come with self acceptance and generosity. And we live in this society where we want things. We constantly want things. And we're told from such a small age, when you have this, when you graduate, when you go to college, when you get married, when you have your house, when. And it's this constant living in the future because we're told that these are the things that we're supposed to strive for to make ourselves happy today.
Well, and I think a lot about people who are around my age. I don't know how old you are, and I won't speculate because
Oh, I'm
regardless,
43, so proud
how
every
dare
single
you be
year.
older than me and look this good? How dare? But I do think to that point of a lot of people who are around my age, our age, who did all those things, who checked all the boxes, and then they got to the final box of like having kids, raising kids, whatever, and they look around and are like, oh shit,
Right.
what now? And their whole identity is wrapped in those checkpoints. And so when those checkpoints are over, their identity goes away, and then they're having an existential crisis
Right.
of like, what in the world do I do now?
Right. Right. Or
Which
enter midlife crisis, right?
right,
By
and
divorce.
totally,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I think to remain topical to this too, like that in my perspective is a scary thing, but it can also be a really wonderful thing to realize, because similarly to coming out of being a sick person in the hospital with cancer, dying, planning funerals, doing all the things, and getting this second chance at life, you have this moment, and it took me years to figure this out, and I'm a little disappointed in myself. But to like put your feet like firmly on the ground and be like, okay, I get to start over now.
Mm,
What do I want to do with my life? What does the meaning of this mean for me now?
mm,
And it's a process. It's not something that's gonna the light switch is just gonna go on, and it's not necessarily something that you figure out in a month, 6 months, a year. It's different for everybody. It's taken me almost 9 years to figure it out. And a lot of that was because I tried to wrap my identity in the person I was before. And I just that again, that person was gone.
mm,
And so when you have those realizations of, oh no, this is I've done all the things and I'm here and I still feel the same, then it's kind of making the conscious decision, which is really the difference, of saying, okay, how can I get what I want now that I've gotten all that I thought that I wanted?
mm. Whoa, 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 whoa. That has to land a moment. Wow. That was really good. Okay, you have to repeat that one more time. That was just so good.
How can I get what I want now that I have all the things that I thought I wanted?
So good. So good.
There's also I will jump off of that by saying there's an artist called Blacksmith who's a balloon artist. You've probably seen him on Instagram. He's everywhere, and he does these like little phrases with little colored balloons. And there's one that he has a whole t-shirt collection, and he did a sale a couple years ago, and I bought a bunch of them. So I have a bunch of these balloon t-shirts. But one of them says, "I'm so glad I didn't get the thing that I thought that I wanted in the first place." And like to me, that's what I just said about what do you want now that you have everything you thought you wanted. Because it's like you get to that point and you're like, shit, I'm here. Like, shouldn't I feel, or shouldn't I have, or shouldn't I be a particular way?
Mm,
And you just don't.
mm. Right. Right. I did an Ironman in 2016, and I was training for it for around 9 months. And so for 9 months, the main focus was race day. And so I lived in the future for 9 months. I trained for the day and I ate for that day, and I avoided social environments if that meant I would stay up late because I got training, and everything I did was around that day. And let me tell you, that really was the most epic day of my life. I've had kids twice, like I have two kids, and crossing that finish line was the most exhilarating experience of my life. But the thing is, Edward, 2 days later, I fell into a deep depression. 2 days after my race, I felt like, okay, now what? Right? Working towards that thing. It's been almost a full year. I'm working towards this thing. Everything around my life revolved around this day. And now that the day is over, then what? Right?
This is why actors are crazy, right?
Mm.
Like as a theater person, as someone who's done musicals their whole life, it's that over and over and over again. Because the way that that whole thing works is you go through rounds and rounds and rounds of auditions, then you book the gig, then you're in the gig, then you're rehearsing for it, then you have opening night, then you run as long as you run, and then when it's over, you start all over again by auditioning for the thing and doing the thing and getting the thing, if you're lucky. And it's the same kind of depression when the show is over. And knowing that I tried so hard in the years that I was working all the time to never get to that point.
Mm.
And it didn't help me in the end because all I was doing was avoiding it by continuing to book jobs. So I'd get the job, and during rehearsals, I'd be looking for another job. And so I was never really present or enjoying the process because I was living in the next job that I was looking for. And even though I did enjoy, what I was doing, and I did love what I was doing, and I made great friends and had great experiences, but it was always, well, I'm submitting for this, well, I'm looking for this, well, while I'm doing this, I'm also going to do this. And some people could say that that's smart and proactive and very business minded, and a good thing to do. And some people might be like, you've wasted these years of your life not enjoying what you were doing in the moment because you were looking to the future. I'm of the mindset that it's kind of both, that you have to be present and also make sure that you're taking care of your future, because you can't just like land flat on your ass on
Right.
purpose because you were trying to live in the moment. Like, be responsible for
Right.
yourself.
Right.
But it's the same kind of thing where you climb the mountain and then the mountain goes away and you're like, and you fall.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, you need to know where you're going. I agree with you 100%. And we need to have a clear vision as to what we want to create, the result or the outcome that we'd like, but let's not get so stuck on that being so rigid, or that we forget to also enjoy the process. And actually, coming back to the Ironman, and then we're going to come off of this topic because I actually have some other questions to ask you. But I remember on race day, somebody told me that, like, probably the best advice I got was like, don't forget to stay in the moment. Like, enjoy every single moment. Don't worry so much about crossing that finish line. Really, the pleasure was in the training. The pleasure was on that day. The pleasure was really in the moment. And when we don't realize that, that's, I think, when we miss it.
Yeah, completely agree.
All right, so I want to come back to your story and your journey, and if we could talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll, if you're open to
We
it.
sure can.
So share a little bit. I know you went through some experiences, and likely with this idea or this concept that this is my only opportunity to do it. I have this one chance to experience certain events, and so maybe you can share a little bit on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the idea of like sex, drugs, and cancer is kind of like, I drank and fucked my way through cancer. And it was a coping mechanism for sure. And it was also a vehicle that I used to feel normal and to kind of, again, cling on to that person that I was beforehand so desperately, because everything in front of me was unknown. And
Mm,
there was like that looming, like, am I going to die? Is this the end? And if this is the end, do I want to have left this planet without having tried Kentucky Fried Chicken?
right.
Or which is a real thing that actually happened. I'd never had it before, then I decided to have it.
And was it
um
good? Did you
it
like?
was it was spectacular. And then I
I've
never
never
had it
tried
again.
it.
It's worth it. I will stand by it. It's worth it. Not sponsored, but Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like, hit me
Fall
up.
in love with fitness, Edward.
Truly. and fried chicken can be part of that. But
True.
like
It's true.
it
Absolutely.
was it was the fried chicken of it all. I'd never smoked pot before. I really overdid it with that at some points, and I talk about that in the book. It was so funny. And it was just kind of like, well, I know that I look like, a shaved seal, but like let's try and get some boys over. And I learned a lot about what men like in that period of time. It
Now you
wasn't
have to
good.
write another book.
I am. It's actually called No One Has Ever Fucked Me Like New York City Has Fucked Me. And I'm not kidding, that's literally the title. Um and that's all of that. So anyway, so yeah, it was definitely coping mechanisms to feel normal, to feel pretty again, to feel like I was part of society, to feel like I was part of my friend group, to go out and participate in things that weren't good for me at all, and in the end were more psychologically damaging than helpful. But in the moment, it felt right. Like, oh, I'm just going to drink my ass off because all my friends are. And like, I'm no different. I'm not a sick person. I can do this. And
Right.
just like down as much bourbon as I could, between chemo appointments. And it was like, what are you doing, man? Like, I look back at that. I'm like, how are you alive? I did everything I could to make sure I did not live. And here we are. So,
And curious through these experiences, and everyone obviously has different experiences that would come to them or they would connect with if they were in your situation. But looking back and just going through these experiences, did they create fulfillment for you? Like, did they serve a particular purpose?
they did. I wouldn't say that it was fulfillment. I would say that it was necessary for me. um Not encouraging it, but it was kind of a thing where it was like, that moment where people are like, yep, still got it. It was like, can I still go to a bar and get drunk with my friends? And it was like, yes, I can. Okay, I am still normal. And it was just proving to myself that I was still a human being that could do things. Like the guys that I hooked up with were some of the hottest guys I've ever seen, which is ridiculous because I looked awful, and we don't need to get into the kink of all of that. But like it was a validating moment where it was like, yeah, still got it, I guess, for some reason, whatever. And just kind of going, like, inching yourself forward to be like, am I still a normal person? Can I still feel the way that I used to? And it's very I don't want to say disassociating, although for real. But like you lose your compass. You have no idea where you are. You're completely lost, and you're just grasping at straws at that point. And you're like, what can I do to feel really anything, for one, and for
Yes.
two, the way that I used to?
Right, right. And it seems like you were also seeking maybe significance, desire, just being seen, I think ultimately, and really I think this is the root to all of our human experience. It's what we all want. And going through something like this where you have no control over your body, where your body has just taken a complete overhaul in another direction and you don't know the outcome and the impact of the treatment and how long this is going to go on for, I can totally see why you would turn to something that would make you feel alive.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I can laugh at it now. At the time, I don't think it was that funny, but I'm like, oh, you little cancer slut, you. Like,
So now 11 years later, right? And you look back at the whole experience. Is there anything that you would want to go back and relive, or is there something also that maybe not that you regret, but that you wouldn't want to repeat?
I think I think the answer that like marketing PR brain is telling me to say is yes, but in all honesty, no.
Mm,
Like every single piece, and this is something that has taken me a very long time to kind of wrap my head around as well. But every single thing that happened during that experience, good, bad, ugly, hurtful, not hurtful, damaging, etc., got me here.
mm,
And I'm okay with that. Like
yeah.
I'm in a pretty good spot as far as this is concerned. So like was it good that those things happened or I did those things to myself? No, but the takeaway from it still lives in who I am now.
Mm,
And so being able to really embrace the faltering of my ways during treatment, and how how I was viewing myself and how I was viewing my life and what future I may have had or didn't have left during that period of time, like that all kind of shaped the way that things are going now,
Mm,
even all these years later. So I think in that's the long answer to say no.
yeah. Yeah, I see. I totally resonate with that. And so if you were again to come back to just look at this whole experience and know that somebody is going through something similar, what advice would you share with them?
Oh my God, this is my favorite. So I would say live under the assumption that you're going to live and make as many good memories as you can. And I say this because you're going to look back at that time through kinder eyes, for one, and you'll give yourself more grace from a removed point of view. And if you can look back and realize that you have purposefully created moments for yourself that you can look to and say, this wasn't all bad, then that is going to be so much better for your recovery, and not just recovery from cancer, but then also like the mental health of it all as you kind of go through it. I can definitively point back to moments that my friends and I and my family and I created that were so fun, and
Mm,
like I wouldn't trade them for anything. And like they're stupid shit that I can laugh about now. Like one that I always talk about that's my favorite is like I had friends over. It was right before my stem cell transplant, and I had friends over. We called the hospital kitchen and we were just like carrying on. We called the hospital kitchen and I asked them for like 4 pizzas, and they were like small little pizzas. They weren't like huge, regular size pizzas. And I was just like, I have friends here, we're hungry, like, can we, whatever. And the woman on the other line was like, I'm so sorry, we can only send up one. It's like one per patient. And I
mm,
was like, cool, I have a stem cell transplant tomorrow. I might die, and these are my friends. So can we just get some fucking pizza? And they did. They sent it up. They were very good about it. And I did call and apologize later. But we had like this pizza party in my room. And we
sweet.
were like listening to music and carrying on. My mom was there, and like it was fun. And like the nurses used to make my room the last room on their round so that they could like hang out with us. We made a really good environment for everyone, so that it wasn't just me trying to make myself feel better to have things to look back at. It was also so my friends could as well, and so my
Mm,
family could as well. And I'm a caretaker by nature, and it's not the best all the time, but I did that on purpose so that we could all just like have a good laugh and look at back at it later and be like, yep, that was a lot of fun.
mm.
And there's like a half a dozen, if not more, moments that I can point to in that period of time that was like, yeah, that was great.
So beautiful. Oh, so beautiful. I love that. So, when you first started talking about your diagnosis, you mentioned that it was a lost cause or the doctors had no idea really how to approach the treatment. Talk to us about your healing. So, how did you get to the place of healing? What did it take? And then, what was that day like for you?
Well, I think that depends on what you mean by healing, right? Because there's a lot of different versions of healing that are going on. It's not just the physical or mental, it's a lot of emotional and life in general. So, I mean, if there's a particular kind of healing you
All
would
of it.
like me
All
to
we're
point
all
to, I
one.
can
It's
certainly do that.
right. We're mind, we're body, we're spirit. We're all of the different parts of us. So whatever you feel resonated with you, the part that needed healing the most, whatever you feel that we would like to share the most.
Well, I think the most immediate thing is the physical, like you want to get back at it. And I joined a fancy expensive gym that I couldn't afford, but I was like, you know what? I deserve it. I'm gonna go. And I would go twice a day because I was like, I am paying for this. I am going.
Mm,
But that was after a long period of time where I could barely walk down the street without getting winded, and that was because I had been in quarantine with tons of drugs running through me for a month. And so it was really building that up. And I'd go on these walks with my mom or my dad, and we'd go down to the river and we would just sit on the benches and watch the runners go by. And I just remember thinking, like, I hate running, but I want to run right now. Like,
oh,
I want to do what they're doing. It's unfair. Because I went into this like in the best shape of my life. And so coming out of it, it was like, okay, I want to get back to that. I'm like skin and bones, like, let's take advantage of this and just get jacked to shit. And
mm,
it never happened. I came close.
Again,
I
we're
just
gonna
couldn't.
connect, Edward.
I have a trainer. He's already mad at me. Like, if he can have pizza Fridays, so can I. Um, but like it was I think that was the most immediate healing that I needed to do. And I think the second version of healing that I needed to do had more to do with my relationships around me and myself, like my relationship to self and the people around me than anything else. And I think I'm very good at doing what I know so that the rest of my brain can function on a higher level. So
Mm,
I don't have to think about what I'm doing. I wrote this book at a desk job where I was just sitting at a computer all day, kind of not doing much. And I had tons of free time. So I just wrote this book. And it was like, I'm at work, I'm doing my thing. When someone comes in, I know what to do and like do all the things, but it's not going to derail me from this.
mm,
And so I kind of did that same thing in my healing process where it was like I was an actor, I knew how to audition, I knew how to get up and go to the gym and go to auditions and do and hang out with my friends, and that's what I'm going to do. And so that was like every day.
mm.
And it was like every day, close to every day, if not every day. And like that's how I gave my brain space and bandwidth to kind of deal with everything else that was going on inside of me, whether that was, anger or grief or feeling that I was unjustly handed the wrong card or whatever you want to call it, and like there was a lot of I don't want to say that I don't want to say that this was like coming from a place of privilege, even though I had an exorbitant amount of it during this period of time. I was so lucky to have the mom I have and the insurance that she had, and like like
Mm,
all of the Obamacare passed like 6 months before, and I was able to get back on my mom's insurance because I wasn't 26 yet. Like it was just the biggest like send from the universe that you could imagine. um but there was a lot of like, this wasn't how my life was supposed to be,
right.
and I was angry about it, and I had to find ways to deal with it. And so that's, the bourbon and cheese situation came in, and that's why I never got jacked. But um, it was just coping mechanism after coping mechanism so that I could like distract myself from the things that were really hurting me. I started my own business during chemo because I was like, I need something to do. And so a lot of it, and this is what I meant earlier when I said it's taken me this long to kind of get to this point. I had spent so much time distracting myself and giving myself other things to do so I didn't have to focus on the garbage going on in my head and the way that I was talking to myself and the way that I was treating myself. And it's really only been within like the last 2 years that it's been like, hey, hang on a minute.
Mm,
And so yeah, I mean that was kind of I mean, I hope that answers your question. I think that
yeah,
answers your
yeah,
question.
so beautiful. So, what was that turning point then for you 2 years ago?
Well, I was living in an apartment in the Upper West Side of Manhattan that was very small, and it was someone else's, and I was paying barely anything at all to live there. And essentially, I was living alone, and it was easy. And it was that kind of thing that I didn't have to think about it so that I could spend other time, energy, and brain space doing other things that I cared about that I wanted to do. And I just hit this moment where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And if I
Mm,
want a different life, I have to change the one I have.
mm,
And I got this big windfall of money from a work thing that I did. And I was like, that's it. I'm taking this and I'm moving. I'm getting out of this apartment and I'm changing everything. And it was by doing that, because that was the apartment that I had moved into right before my stem cell transplant. I'd lived there for almost 10 years. And it was just like time to go, rip the band-aid off. I found this beautiful, enormous place up here in Washington Heights. And it really has and continues to force me to do and be better.
mm. Wow. It's always that line in the sand moment, right? When we decide that's it, these are not
Yeah.
my standards, because whatever we tolerate, it's what we continue to get. And whatever
Yeah.
our situation is, if we still find the comfort in it and we still continue to tolerate it, whether that is somebody being abusive to us or a lifestyle that we don't honor or resonate with, we continue to get it until we decide
Yeah.
not for me anymore.
And it's the choosing of it too that gets me. Like I didn't ever hear anyone say like out loud, that all the like bad decisions I was making or all the things that like I was doing were my choice, because it was like, no, I have to do it to do this. Like, no, you never did. And it
Mm,
was kind of like pulling back the curtain, like the don't look behind the curtain kind of thing.
mm,
Um, During that period of time, that I was like, wait a minute, if I want to do something else, I can just go do something else. And especially, and this is true everywhere, but I think it's especially true in larger cities, like I'm in Manhattan, man. Like I can change my identity and who and what I do on a dime. And
mm,
as long as like, because social media is what we do now, like as long as that reflects it, no one's going to question it, because they're just going to be like, oh yeah, okay, cool, great.
yeah.
And so it really is about that, realizing that you get to choose and you get to make that decision and make and draw that line in the sand and say, I'm not going past this. I will not.
Love that. So, this was such a beautiful conversation, and I'm so sad that we are at the top of the hour. And so, are there any final words that you want to share, maybe with the audience you haven't had a chance to yet?
I want to say be kinder to yourself. And I think that sounds like so hallmarky and like so like ugh, but it's so true, because none of us are nice to ourselves. And I think that's 100% true. I don't care how good your mindset is. I don't care how much of this shit you've done. You're not nice to yourself. And I don't know, I don't really understand why that is inherently our default.
Mm,
And it is one of the hardest things to get out of. But I have found, I have it written on my mirror too, that if you tell yourself that you're amazing every single day in some way, whether you see it subliminally on a note on your mirror or you like actually consciously out loud tell yourself that you're amazing, it really does help. It's a brain rewire, and you just have to be like, you know what? I'm fucking amazing. Who cares? What are you gonna do? You can't touch me. Like it's just stepping into your own power, I guess, is what that is. So if I have to close with anything, I would say be kinder to yourself and step into yourself.
so good. I love that. You're amazing. You're such a beautiful person, and I appreciate and love so much this conversation, and that you were able to really share and just open up and create this beautiful space of expansion for all of us to really think about our life now and get to decide who we truly want to be, Edward. So powerful.
Thank you.
So if people wanted to reach out to you, where could they go to do that?
Well, on the subject of social media,
Hmm.
you can find me anywhere. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Edward Miskie. I also have a YouTube that has a new podcast on it called How to Be a Big Deal. There's going to be another one coming out soon called I Want to Be a Rich Bitch that my friend Sarah and I are doing. And and yeah, I mean, you can also get my book too, Cancer, Musical Theater, and Other Chronic Illnesses, at Barnes and Noble and a ton of other places that carry books.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you, Sherry.